Yeah, I know. I'm incredibly lucky to be alive right now. Yeah. What? No. Nothing's hurt. Well, except... Well, actually, my leg probably shouldn't be bending like that. This day did not go how I expected it to at all. I just buried a fucking movie for 45 minutes in the middle of the fucking woods. Jesus Christ. Jesus fucking Christ. Pet Sematary was an important piece of media to me because it was the first Stephen King book I had ever read. And the loss that the characters go through was deeply agonizing for me. I felt as if I was in the story with these characters. So you can see why I'm going to go as in-depth to this as I am. In 1983, upon the sunken summer twilights blanketing the Maine countryside, Stephen King sat alone in a small room on the top floor of an old colonial. The summer air is still strong in the birth of night, and all whom live in the house already lay silent. In his hand, a manuscript, and also there was pain, horror, ancient beings, and the story of the supernatural bending the human comprehension of death to the breaking point. But instead of that beautifully handled content, let's put ourselves through some watered-down version on a piece of film. Why think when you can watch, huh? So, without further ado, let's grab a beer, bury the bloated corpse of our pet dead cat, and watch this rotting corpse of a VHS. Well, wham bam, thank you ma'am. We have a poster still of Pascal staring into the abyss, and Church the cat posing for a Meow Mix advertisement below. I feel strange about the title here, as it's mostly a boring font with no immediate impression of character. Weird for a Stephen King property. 45% of the back cover is taken up by one still of Gage Creed holding his father's scalpel and giving the best scary face he can. Keep trying, you little cutie. Oh god, I just want to pinch your cheeks. The front cover has better colors, the title font takes away from the side labels, and the box overall is a little on the lame side for my taste. But the strange thing about it is that while it doesn't give off any immediate vibes from the actual story or like the book's cover, it is actually pretty indicative of the film inside. It's a different feel, is what I'm trying to say. But it's not too jarring for me to immediately write it off, and it does just feel like an interpretation. I would actually say that the promotional art in the posters for the 2019 version are much more akin to the novel, and I prefer the way it was handled there to this one. Anyway, nothing too special about the tape itself, and this is already getting off to a great start. Under the direction of Mary Lambert, a piece of wood, his wife and their 2 children, Cutie and Screamy McScreamerson, move up to Maine from Chicago for Lewis's new job as one of the only lead male characters in a King book or movie who isn't a famous author. Of course, this doesn't leave much time for watching his children, least of all this cute little dum-dum who is saved from becoming a pancake by the greatest King character in the history of King characters. This is the man that makes this film. Fred Gwynne does an eerily fantastic job playing Judd Crandall, and I wish I could say the same about the other actors here, but at best the parents are serviceable, and the kids are better than average. Fred here chews scenery like it's steak, and forms a stronger bridge between book and movie than the recent interpretation in 2019. You can't really replicate the atmosphere he brings to this film. Out of the kindness of his elephant-sized heart, Judd hands Lewis a beer and they talk about roods and the like. This is something that I found to be better in this movie than the latest remake in 2019. The Judd and Lewis relationship was stronger in this movie, and a genuine friendship is formed. I guess it's not important really, but it makes more sense when Judd takes Lewis to the Pet Sematary and the burial ground. Lewis goes because he trusts Judd. Lewis gets up the next morning and heads into his new job, treating gonorrhea and horrible beer pong-related injuries at the college. But the day is slow, so instead he starts a side project, just trying to keep the gray matter pieced together in this student's brain. Unfortunately enough for Lewis, the student just fucking dies for some reason. Why'd you do that? You don't have to be so rude. No, it's such a shame that this is the last time we're gonna see this character. I was really starting to get to know him over the 2 seconds he was on an operating table. Wait a second. Oh, I see what's going on here. I'm picking up what you're laying down. I am privy to it all. You are sending me telepathic messages, and I gotta tell you, I get it! So anyway, before tossing the sprocket, Pascal talks about the Pet Sematary, and Louis just can't get the fell out of his head. Good news then, because Pascal surprises him with a late-night walk. They talk about their future together and what to name their new zombie ghost children, and also Louis will ruin his entire life and his family's lives if he even steps foot on the cursed soil behind this glowing pile of branches. What are you upset at? You can't do that? You can't do that simple one little thing? You can't not adhere to the supernatural forces beckoning you to the side of your family's damnation? Louis, buddy. The first time I saw this, I was pretty upset that this scene wasn't as intense as I had imagined it when reading the story. But now that it's been a couple times, I can appreciate the work put into the Pet Sematary itself and into the forest they're walking through. Pascal looks phenomenal and incredibly better than the makeup used in the 2019 version. See, that's another thing. Pascal was much better used in this movie. Initially, I never liked how he would just pop up stupidly just to use the actor. But now I can see the novelty to his appearance, and that something was needed to remind the audience this was supposed to be supernatural. At any rate, I'm giving it a VHS highlight. Supermodel housewife decides she doesn't like walking to the local pet cemetery because it reminds her of her sister. Oh, secretly an anorexic man in little girl's clothing? Zelda was played phenomenally, and it's easy to see why generations of people say that she scared the shit out of them as kids. It's a small thing that this movie does really well, which, again, is leaps and bounds from the forgettable flesh mess that Zelda was in the 2019 version. Visiting the Pet Sematary gets the existential fear gears grunting in the peeny child brain of the daughter, who takes time off from carrying the emotional weight of this movie to question death a little bit. You know what? This little girl's right to question you. Why you gotta be so mean? The divorce changed you, Eric. You need to be the man I need. Maybe one day we can try again. Maybe we'll take the children to a picnic all together. But until that day, you need to change. For me. Here's the meat of the movie's subtext. Death. How it feels to lose someone. How it feels to acknowledge and accept death, and how hard that can be. Is it handled well in this movie? Hell, I don't know. I don't see the weight in the film very much, and that can leave something to be desired. But that's better than nothing. The 2019 version handled it ham-fisted most of the time, or even ignored the point.
Here's your bones.
Hello.
Louis, afraid you may have a spot of trouble here.
Judd, what trouble?
Alright, Judd, got here as soon as I could. What are we doing here? Am I snorting coke off your earlobe? You snorting coke off my earlobe? Church the Cat meets his untimely end. It's actually pretty well handled in this movie. I mean, again, Louis is like paper and water and seems about as interested. But you can feel the ancient spooky air creeping up from beyond the trees. This is the turning point for the film, and the colors of the sky and clothes on the men and Church's corpse certainly earn this little scene a VHS highlight. Judd and Louis make the treacherous and eerie journey to the Pet Sematary, and then, maybe not. The place beyond beckons Judd, and he decides to tell Louis, and let him in on an old secret burned into the earth beyond those woods hundreds of years before either of them were born. This is an incredibly important scene to the novel, and is probably most important to me because it's what pulled me in as the reader. Here, it's okay. The journey novelized takes them through the swamp, dark woods. The area closes in on them, and you by proxy until there's nowhere else to go, and you have to heed the call of the ancient evil in the Micmac burial ground. Unfortunately enough, the movie spends little time on the trip. They could have at least had colored lighting as the night got darker, maybe included the swamp scene. That's something that the 2019 version did exceptionally well. The trip seemed to mean something, and felt like you were gearing up for something fucking intense. 1 minute, the world was right, and 4 footsteps later, you weren't in the same world, but some dark perversion of it. So, this is the turning point for the film, and we're going to go ahead and stop here, so I don't spoil any more for anybody who might want to watch it. It's a great movie. and I'd love to go more in depth, but also I think I've pretty much run the clock on what I can do anyway. I don't hate the movie. I just don't think it used everything that Stephen King gave the original story. I don't think it had the punch that it was supposed to have on me, and anybody else who would have watched it. People who have only seen this movie and think they know Pet Sematary should really give the book a read. Now, what do I think of it just as the VHS? I mean, that's the title of my fucking channel. It's good. It's alright. Again, I told you what I think about the box art. I think they could have released... If there was a different release with better art, I would have purchased it. I think that a lot of the scenes look fantastic through a VCR. I'm a huge fan of the way that, especially the night scenes are handled, with the fog and the cemetery, the headstones, Judd fucking Crandall. But some of the performances are just a little too bland, and altogether it comes off as kind of hokey. But I mean, I'll still watch it if I'm ever in the mood to relive the story. So, which interpretation of Pet Sematary do I think is superior? Well, Pet Sematary 2, directed by Mary Lambert, with the kid who played John Connor in Terminator 2. There you go. Goodbye. Good night, folks.